Okay, Chris, if you want to. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, councillors, welcome, officers, and any members of the public who may be viewing us online. You're very welcome to the meeting of the Hub Committee on Tuesday, the 12th. Sorry, Tuesday. That's the last minute. The Hub Committee on Tuesday, the 7th of June. If I can especially welcome Councillor Vachon to his first meeting. Congratulations on your appointment, Councillor Vachon. You're very welcome. If I could also welcome Chris Edmonds, Councillor Edmonds, on his appointment as Deputy Chair of this meeting, and give my thanks to Councillor Cheadle for carrying out that role over the past year.
Thank you.
So, members, item 1 on the agenda. Get to that point, is apologies for absence. I think, Mr. White, we have one apology.
We do, thank you, Leader. We've got an apology for this afternoon's meeting from Councillor Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. In accordance with the Code of Conduct, members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests, including the nature and extent of such interest they may have in any items to be considered at the meeting. Members, does anyone have any declarations of interest they would like to make? I've got nothing coming forward, Mr. White. Item 3, items requiring urgent attention. I've not been advised of any, Mr. White.
That's correct, thank you, Leader. We have none.
Thank you. Item 4, confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of April 2022. Members, if we can go through those minutes just page by page for accuracy and correctness. Anything on page 1 of those minutes? Page 2. Page 3, page 4, and page 5. In which case, Mr. White, I'm happy to accept those minutes as a fair and honest reflection of the meeting.
Thank you, Leader.
Item 6, members, is the Hub Committee Forward Plan. This is in the usual format, and members are asked to note the forward plan and also to highlight any discrepancies or anything they think should be amended or added to the plan. Does anybody have any comments with regards to the forward plan? Councillor Cheadle.
I just note that the forward is incorrect in that it still has me down as Deputy Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. We'll make sure that gets amended. Any other comments, members, or are we happy to note and accept the forward plan? Thank you. Item 7 is the annual report achievements. So, members, the draft copy of the annual report has been circulated. The report provides, in my view, an excellent summary of the work that the Council has been involved in over the past year. It incorporates many of our achievements against our plan for West Devon, for officers of the Council who continue to adapt ways of working, have efficiently and effectively distributed millions of pounds of support to businesses via a plethora of different schemes at a time when they most needed it. One major boost for the borough, and for Oakhampton in particular, was the reintroduction of the regular rail service to the town station. We're sure this project will give an economic boost to the area, the rest of the borough and beyond, and we are grateful to all those that worked with Devon County Council, Great Western Rail, Network Rail, West Devon, Oakhampton Town Council and the Oak Rail Group to bring this about. We continue to work with our partners to provide additional access via a proposed West Devon transport hub to that line in order to enhance the service still further. Our contracted waste and recycling service has also performed admirably for most of that period. I have the utmost admiration for the staff there, the job they do, and the manner in which they carry it out. However, that service has suffered from the national shortage of HGV drivers and resourcing difficulties, which have resulted in some collection problems. We continue to work with the contractors to find ways to meet high performance standards to which we aspire. Despite all the difficulties and problems, there were many positive achievements over the year, and the Council will report a balanced budget. The next few years will continue to be challenging. We need to deliver more around our climate change and biodiversity targets, respond to the housing crisis, provide assistance to residents struggling with high cost of living increases, welcome Ukrainian refugees to the borough under the Homes for Ukraine scheme, and so on. I hope that this report shows what your council has achieved over the last year and assures you that we are well placed to continue to serve our communities for the challenges that lie ahead. Members, the report has been circulated and includes, I think, some really interesting details about progress that we've made in the different theme areas within the council. I'd be very welcome to take any comments, observations or questions at this point. Councillor Cheadle.
Just for a matter of clarification, the couple of sentences you read out, is that basically what's going in the missing box?
That's the intention. That will be the introduction to the report.
Yeah. I'm pleased that we've smuggled in the fact that we have had a struggle with the waste service in the last couple of months at least, because that's something that the residents, I think, would expect to see in a report.
Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. Okay, any other questions or comments from members? In which case I'd like to propose the recommendation that the Hub Committee note the achievements of the Council during 2021-22 and agree the publication of the annual report as a record of those achievements. If I could have a seconder, please.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Is there any debate at this point? In which case I'd like to move to a vote on the recommendations. All those in favour?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. The next item is with regards to our response to the housing crisis. If I could ask Councillor Ratcliffe to introduce this item. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to introduce the housing crisis update, strengthening housing delivery, which may be found on pages 11 to 24 of this agenda, and the proposed revised housing team structure, which appears on Appendix 1. The proposed re-strengthening of the housing department will enable our officers to meet the increasing social needs we are faced today in West Devon. And may I ask Mrs. Blake to take us through the report, plus Appendix 1, and take any members' questions.
Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe. Since the Council made housing a corporate priority and declared a housing crisis, we've been doing our utmost to introduce measures to tackle the problem. Members will be aware that we've obtained the planning permission for Spring Hill, our dedicated homeless provision. We've developed a new 5-year homeless strategy, and to make best use of stock, we've introduced one of the most generous downsizing payments in the country. We continue to prevent homelessness wherever possible, keeping stays in temporary accommodation to an absolute minimum. We've also implemented the Homes for Ukraine scheme. We continue to support rough sleepers, support gypsies, travellers and caravan dwellers, challenge developers on their affordable housing contributions, and support neighbourhood groups, CLTs and registered providers to bring forward much needed affordable housing in our area. We've so far done that with no additional resource, and member ambition is not in keeping with the staff required to do it. The paper is a request to use funding, homeless prevention funding, and increase the budget so that our aspirations and ambitions in tackling the housing crisis are matched with the staff required to get it done. These posts are instrumental in accelerating planning on affordable lead sites to bring forward development on sites we own and take forward a strategic partnership with a registered provider to joint venture on affordable housing projects, all whilst compiling a solid evidence base of where and what the need is. We wish to recruit immediately to drive forward our ambitious programme if the paper is approved today, and I'm happy to take any questions on the new posts.
Thank you, Mrs. Blake. Members, do we have any questions at this point? No, thank you for your very comprehensive paper in that case, Mrs. Blake. It's obviously answered everyone's questions. Councillor Ratcliffe, could I ask you to move the recommendations on the paper, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the recommendations are: 1, note that the proposed revised housing team structure at Appendix 1, and 2, recommend to Council to approve an annual revenue cost pressure of £29,800, which is West Devon Borough Council's share, to be built into the budget process for the years 23-24 onwards, and a one-off expenditure of £100,520 to be funded from the 2021-22 Government Homeless Prevention Grant. This will be used to fund the additional posts for the new housing team structure as set out in Appendix 1.
Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe. Members, any debate on this item? Thank you. All very clear, in which case we'll move to a vote on the recommendations. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Members, the next item is in relation to the waste and recycling report, which has been sent around, waste and recycling performance update. Members will be aware of the difficulties that the waste and recycling service has been experiencing. This report sums up that position, sets out the background and our proposed way forward. Missed collections are running at figures in excess of the contract performance indicators as shown on the graphs contained within the report. It's true to say that COVID and the absence of up to 20% of the workforce at any one time were initial contributors to the problems that have developed over recent months. But recent performance has worsened and has been complicated by an HGV driver shortage, plus well publicised difficulties in the employment market generally. We know that FCC are working hard in conjunction with our staff to redress these problems. This has resulted in significant difficulties being experienced in incompleted rounds in the period since October of last year. We have continued to monitor performance and work with FCC to work with FCC, the contractor, and to update members regarding missed collections. However, it's apparent that FCC need to continue to deliver significant improvements to return the service to within the contracted levels. Members, are there any questions on the report that is in front of you? Councillor Cheadle.
Well, it's just, I think all members have been briefed that the Crowndale Recycling Centre will close, I think, about a month while South West Water do an upgrade to the sewage system or some part of the infrastructure. And with if FCC's performance continues to be variable, one thing residents could do, of course, is take things to the recycling centre. But if the recycling centre is shut, it sort of compounds that difficulty. I just wonder if there's been any dialogue with Devon County Council to see if we can smooth out any potential problems associated with that.
Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. Mr. Molyneux.
We have been in dialogue with Devon County Council and FCC, and we're not anticipating that there will be any further issues. I think what I would say, Leader, is I'm pleased to report that performance for May has improved significantly. So if we look at one of the graphs, can't remember which graph it is now, just bear with me. So all the sort of graphs in section 5 show a steep increase in worsening performance in March and April, and the performance figures for May are now back to the previous performance levels of February, so about a 60 to 70% reduction in misses. So at the moment, if FCC maintain that trajectory, then I don't anticipate there being the same level of disruption, and therefore the need for residents to actually take their recycling to the recycling centres should be negated. But we have been, we do actually use that, FCC use that centre themselves, so we have been talking with FCC and Devon County to ensure there's no disruption to further disruption to collections.
Thank you. Does that help, Councillor Dew?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which case, I'd like to move, if I may, Councillor Mott.
Sorry, not so much a question on the report, but more maybe it would be useful to get FCC to come in and speak to overview and scrutiny, because that seems to be the main committee that we get outside bodies to come and report to. That they would be able to then give us an update on issues from as well.
Thank you, Councillor Mott. I think there will be a time when we will get FCC to come in and talk to overview and scrutiny, definitely. So perhaps we can liaise Mr Molyneux with FCC and the chair of O&S and find a suitable time for that. Thank you, members. In which case, I'd like to move the recommendations, the 3 recommendations that are shown on page 1 of the report. If I could move those and have a second for that, and we'll move into debate, and we'll discuss in particular, I think, one aspect of the recommendations.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Members will note that one of the recommendations is to consider all available options, including those options available under the contract, to improve performance of the waste and recycling service. Clearly, there are a whole range of different options that are available to us within the contract. If we were to discuss those in detail, we would need to move into part 2 due to the commercial sensitivity of some of those arrangements. But I think Mr Molyneux has highlighted in one of his responses that there has been an improvement recently. And I would suggest, if that's the case, perhaps an amendment to that recommendation that we continue to monitor in accordance with the contract, but are mindful that we do have and we will consider other available options in due course if needed. So I'd like to propose that we amend that final recommendation to read that the Hub Committee continue to monitor contract performance and to consider all available options, including those options available under the contract, to improve the performance of the waste and recycling service in due course if required. Councillor Mott.
I think I would have to ask then for reassurance from the officers and the team that they feel that this downward dip is going to be a more consistent one that's going to remain at that level rather than it being a glitch in the system.
If you look at the trend over the last sort of 12, 18 months, it has been pretty inconsistent, I have to say, Councillor Mott. I think what we've seen as an officer team is we've seen what was effectively 2 years ago quarterly monitoring of the contract to go to monthly monitoring of the contract, go to weekly monitoring of the contract, and we're now effectively monitoring FCC's performance every day. So I would be recommending that we continue to monitor on a daily basis so that we pick up if the performance does worsen again. I think the issues are around the manpower and around the supervision. And I think the two real downturns in performance have all coincided with changes in supervision. So it's not that the crews are not working their socks off, thank you for the right word. The wrong word nearly came into my head. Working their socks off. And I think it's about the coordination and management of that workforce to make sure that collections that are missed are gone back for. So I think we need to maintain that detailed level of monitoring.
Okay, if I can, and yes, it's not meant to be a criticism of the boots on the ground, as it were, because I know they work really hard, and I know residents are supportive of the difficulties that they're finding, and in the main respect the work that they do and the effort that they put in. Bearing in mind then that we are having to monitor their performance, what is the impact on our own staff for that?
It takes a little bit of time. It's not stopped some of the development work that's been going on with Devon County Council. It's not stopped some of the work that we're doing on some of the commitments we've made to the Environment Agency around improving the health and safety at the Haydown plant. So we're still doing all of that stuff. So I think we can manage at the moment.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mott. Councillor Vachon.
Thank you, Leader. When we say in due course, obviously that's a pretty open-ended sort of statement. Is there a sort of a series of levels of monitoring when we get to a certain level very low and for many days or weeks? Do we get a chance to react to that, or do we react to that in a way that we can actually step in?
So we are reacting and stepping in and making suggestions to FCC on how they improve. We are using the contract as a penalty regime, remedies, I think is the phrase, the contractual phrase, that we are enforcing to ensure that FCC realise that if they do not meet the contractual performance, we will enforce those penalties on them, and that's what we're doing. So far, I think the combination of the daily monitoring, the enforcement of the contract rules is having an effect. I mean, in terms of getting to the contracted level of service, I think there's still a way to go. And if that first graph on page 2, which shows the gradual worsening of performance, of course, coincided with COVID, coincided with the driver shortage. But what we need to see is that now start moving back to the contractual levels. And we've made it clear to FCC that that's where we expect them to be.
Any other debate, members? Councillor Crozier.
Thank you, Chair. This is the most inconvenient problem that we've had. This has been a perfect storm for a business like FCC in collecting our waste in a period where we've had an epidemic of massive proportions and then still trying to run a door-to-door service. In my opinion, they deserve some sympathy, but particularly in West Devon, because their record actually has been quite good in West Devon. South Hams, that's a different matter, and I can't comment on that. But I know from personal experience of seeing the operators, they seem to be efficient on the ground, and they're trying their best to provide the service that we wish to see. But if people test positive for COVID, they're not going to turn up. And it's very difficult to actually replace those people at short notice. The performance in the last 3 months has been, or April I think it is, was particularly bad, and that was probably worse than any period during the last 2 years. So that is a blip. I think that's the one we need to be concerned with, not necessarily previous 18 months. Because I think they had justification of the problems they had within West Devon, but not elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crozier. I'm inclined to agree with you whilst acknowledging that we must keep on top of the contract and we must get value for money for our residents and ratepayers as well. I think members will also be mindful that this report was written a little while ago and things might have got worse. As it happens, they do seem to have stabilised at least, and we're looking more positive. So hence my suggestion that we continue to do what we're doing at the moment, but reserve, as we undoubtedly have, the right to come back at a future point and discuss whether there should be any other options that we bring into play. So hopefully that is acceptable to members. Any other debate, members? Councillor Cheadle.
Thank you, Leader. It wouldn't be the hub if at some stage I didn't raise the point that under implications we've yet again missed out consultation, engagement and communications as one of the implications of the report. The reason I raise that here, I mean, it's true on many of the reports today, but the reason I raise it here is it's a statutory service, and if there's one thing the residents do need to be kept informed of is when the statutory service isn't all that we would wish it to be. It might be difficult to agree the precise way in which we do communicate what's happening to residents in a way that makes sense and they can understand, but that shouldn't stop us trying. I think it's important that we keep residents appraised of a statutory service that isn't taking place the way it should be.
Thank you, Councillor. I entirely agree. I think the reports that are coming out to members have been really useful in that sense, allowing members to respond to inquiries that they get direct. And as far as I'm aware, we are putting updates out onto our website and social media in the way we have been over recent months. So I'd urge people to look out for those and for us to maintain that. But any other suggestions that people have in terms of improving that side of the service, obviously we'd be happy to consider. I think point well made, Councillor Cheadle. Thank you. Any other debate, members? In which case, I think, Mr. White, I will need a seconder for, or at least the original seconder is happy with my proposed amendment.
That's correct, Leader.
I'm happy with that proposal.
Thank you. So members, can we move to a vote on those recommendations, including the amended third recommendation that we continue to monitor? All those in favour?
That's unanimous, the updated recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, members. Members, the next item on the agenda is key partnerships, and I'd like to call on Councillor Leach to introduce this item.
I should have declared an interest in one bit of this because I'm a trustee on the Oakham Community Transport Group.
Thank you, Councillor. You've done it now. Councillor Vachon.
Yes, Leader. I believe I'm presenting this report now.
You're quite correct. I was mistaken and put off by Councillor Leach's frantic waving at the time, and now I understand why. If I could ask Councillor Vachon to introduce this report.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Leach. This report refers to the community groups and organisations that the council funds to complement its services and to support the plan for West Devon. We're now in the final year of a 3-year funding arrangement, which was begun in 2019. The report outlines the work of the key partners currently funded and potential continued funding by extending the term by an additional 2 years. Now, following on from the Community Advisory Group, which met last February, who considered matters in relation to these key groups to the plan for West Devon, and in particular the requirement to review their funding in 2022-23, certain options were considered. Obviously, 3 years is a long time, especially with the events that have occurred during this period, as the Leader has alluded to previously. It would be then prudent to give the key groups the opportunity to revise or refresh their original application and give a short review and update of any changes that might have occurred. And this forms the recommendations as outlined at the top of this report. If there are any questions, members, have any questions, I'm sure Mr. Hawke will be pleased to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mashall. Members, any questions on the content of the report?
Sorry, Chair, do you need me to stop asking questions? My understanding was that these partners were meant to be giving us an annual feedback anyway on to what they were doing with the money and how they were performing and any changes. Am I mistaken in that?
Thank you, Councillor Mott. We didn't set out originally that there would be an annual update, although the majority of the partners have presented an update to overview and scrutiny, as well as sort of snippets of updates through the member bulletin, which is sent out on a weekly basis. I think one of the things we would be putting in place formally as part of this is that for each, if we agree or you agree to extend the funding for 2 years, each of the partners on here would be scheduled in to attend overview and scrutiny each year to give a short update on their performance.
I'm just concerned, I think, in that they get the award of money for the next 3 years, and then there's no sort of scrutiny of that during that 3-year period when, of course, anything, as we know, can happen. So it would be good to see those annual reports come back to this committee, please.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Cheadle.
Well, yes, without wishing to open the sort of Pandora's box that we've been round before, well, I fear I'm about to. There are lots of organisations out there that could do with help, as the pandemic showed that lots of different organisations that struggled, and some succeeded and some didn't. We've selected a subset of organisations. And I just wonder if there's any horizon scanning to see whether there are organisations out there that are more worthy of the funding than the ones that we happen to have chosen, you see what I mean? Because we're going to sort of automatically roll, well, we might automatically roll the funding from the current set on for another couple of years. And I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with that at all. But is there an opportunity at some stage just to say, I wonder if that's the right subset? Is that the most appropriate subset for the limited funding we have available?
Thank you. I think that's a really good point, actually, Councillor Cheadle, and I think we should tie that into this process if that's at all possible, Mr. Hawke. I know there will have been funding available for various groups from some Devon County funding that was available over COVID and latterly, and that might be an interesting starting place. But any other contacts that people have that would like to be considered, I think, ought to be viewed within that process, recognising, of course, that there's going to have to be some kind of rationing because we will have limited resources. Councillor Crozier.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, one of the areas that actually concerns me very much is the rise of antisocial behaviour right through the borough. You know, we hear about Oakhampton, Tavistock, and I've mentioned Alston before, but talking to the police, they're having problems in the Horror Bridge as well, and Bridgetown, and the number of police we have to cover all these places isn't enough. But the other way to tackle it is greater investment in youth facilities. The youth club in Alston is open 1 day a week. If that was open more, perhaps we might have less vandalism, in particular around the village hall. We've just spent quite a sum of money on roof repairs, where things get chucked on the roofs and slates get broken, etc., etc. Apart from balls being lodged up there, etc., and lumps of timber thrown up onto the roof to try and dislodge the balls. You know, unfortunately, youth, when it gets frustrated, it does take it out on the community assets, is the best way to put it. And we, as I represent the parish council as well for Alston, I have quite a large bill over the last year on antisocial behaviour, and I would like to see some efforts in redirecting help to youth. We just had a very successful Jubilee weekend. One of the items was 4 trips on the barge, the sailing barge, the liner, down the Tamar out into the River Sound and beyond, back again. Unfortunately, one day was cancelled because the wind got too high. Thanks for Chief, you know about that. But
He was on the list.
Okay, you might have seen them sinking. But one of the unfortunate aspects, one of those trips was never fully subscribed, and that was from the Youth Club. Now, I told the organiser, I said, don't worry about the funding. Whatever happens, I'll find the funding. But only 2 children came forward, and I found that very disappointing. And unfortunately, the organiser cancelled the trip before they let me know. But you can understand the dilemma that not only I face, but other members do as well.
Thank you, Councillor Crozier. I've certainly got some views on that. I will be having a further conversation with Mr. Hawke about links meetings. I wonder whether that topic might be something we could pick up at links meetings and get the involvement of parishes and towns in coming up with some ideas that we can collectively institute. So if you'll allow us, we'll take that forward through that route, I think. Councillor Leach.
Yes, just a couple of words on community transport groups. We fund 2 groups, one which is now a private service, it's not charity anymore, but there's 2 other groups. One is close to Catch Chisels and one in Tavistock who get nothing at all. And I've never quite understood that, how that came about, that only 2 groups managed to get funding. Maybe that's something we could look at.
Thank you, Councillor Leach. I think we'll certainly add that to the list of things we can look at as well. So thank you. Councillor Vachon.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I totally concur with all the statements made about the antisocial behaviour. Obviously, we do have various voluntary groups in the area, and I think CVS is probably the conduit to go to those groups and to help fund through that method.
Thank you. Reminding me that was going to be the other suggestion that I would make in looking at this, that we would also talk to CVS and get CVS's view on where there might be particular demand or where we could particularly make a difference. So I think all of those are really helpful suggestions. Thank you. So, any more questions, members? Councillor Mott.
Sorry, can I just check, are we then inviting other groups to come forward for funding, or are we investigating other groups, or are we just sticking with the ones that are on the list?
What's your view on that?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Mott. So the proposal is at this point in time that we stick with the groups that we currently fund, very much because they are aligned to the plan for West Devon, but as part of the refresh of the next delivery plan for a plan for West Devon, we would look at what other groups align to supporting us through that. So at this stage, it would just be the groups that we currently fund to give them some financial certainty, but also to get us through the final year of the plan for West Devon delivery plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, councillors? In which case, Councillor Vachon, if you'd like to propose the recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. I'd like the council to agree the following recommendations. 1, note the positive contribution of our key funded partnerships in supporting our ambitions as set out in our corporate strategy, a plan for West Devon. 2, request that the head of strategy liaise with existing key partners as set out in section 2.6 to request that an updated application be submitted for further 2-year funding arrangement from the 31st of the 3rd, 2023. And 3, consider the returned application forms at their meeting in September 2022.
Thank you. Can we have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. Members, any debate? Councillor Cheadle.
Well, it's just really to tie up Councillor Mott's question about whether we're sticking with the groups or not, because could be an element of confusion here. I think when the forms come back to us in September, it gives us an opportunity to review whether we're still, in fact, putting our money in the right place. And if we're not, then it gives us an option to make other decisions should we need to. So today's not the decision that we are going to fund these groups. Today's the decision that they're going to, in a sense, reapply. And in September, there's an expectation that we might run them on. But if there's something that doesn't quite match our aspirations, it gives us an opportunity to do something different. I think that's the position, isn't it?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crozier.
Councillor Cheadle has made the very point that I was going to make. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Members, any other debate? In which case we'll move to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendations?
That's unanimous, thank you.
Thank you, members. If we can move on to item 11, council tax rebate discretionary scheme. And if I could ask Councillor Evans to please present this paper together with Councillor Leach. Well, thank you, Chair. But I will hand over to Councillor Leach, who's going to lead on this one. Thank you, Councillor Leach.
Thank you. Most of this report basically speaks for itself, but I'll just run through some of the details. Supporting our residents, energy, food, fuel prices rise significantly is a key and urgent priority for the Council. The purpose of this report is to enable the Hub Committee to make a decision on the discretionary element of the government's council tax rebate scheme. As part of the government scheme, the council has now awarded has been awarded a sum of £110,550. That's in addition to the main scheme award of £2,875,350, known as the discretionary fund. This is to support households who are in need but are not eligible for the main £150 tax rebate scheme. As of May 2022, the Council has paid 12,917 households out of 13,924 who are eligible through direct debit payers, that's 93%, and distributed £1,937,550. The Council has received 903 applications. This is out of 4,875 eligible households. From those households that do not pay by direct debit, and these began being processed for payment actually on the 23rd of May this year. The Council will be contacting the remainder of the households via direct mail within the next few weeks to offer direct payment via local post offices. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the staff and everybody who's been involved in this process. It's been a lot of hard work, and the efforts that have been put in has actually shown West Devon literally well ahead of most councils in the country. So I'd like to thank them all. The policy attached to Appendix A proposes supporting those residents who are working on low income with limited or no access of financial support from existing benefits and other beneficiary schemes, but are experiencing hardship due to the increasing cost of energy bills. This report also explains, that's in Appendix C, what other discretionary schemes the Council has in place to support residents and update members on the second tranche of the government funding for the Household Support Fund, brackets HSF. The proposed council tax rebate discretionary policy. The purpose of the policy is to determine eligibility for payment under the council's discretionary council tax rebate scheme. The scheme has been designed based on general guidance issued by the Secretary of State for the Levelling Up. This came through in February 2022. However, it's separate to the mandatory council tax rebate scheme, which is largely determined by government. The scheme is aimed to support residents that are working on low income and have limited or no access to benefits. This makes it difficult to actually quantify the number of residents who will apply. We intend to spend all the allocated monies on residents who are struggling. Therefore, we intend to make the payments in 2 phases. Phase 1, award one-off payment of £150 to any household who reside in a property dwelling with a council tax band of E to H and who are currently in receipt for council tax reduction. There is currently 117 claims which would result in awarding £550. Award a one-off payment of £150 to any household who resides in a dwelling and where the owner is liable for council tax and the council tax liability for owners regulations 1992, but where the household are directly liable for energy bills. This would include people living in a house of multiple occupancy or someone under the age of 18. Thirdly, here, award a one-off payment of £150 to households who reside in a dwelling with a council tax benefit E to H and who are not received of council tax reduction, but have a capital of no more than £6,000 and a weekly income less than the following. So £250 for a single person, £320 for a couple, £400 for a family, brackets lone parent or couple, with one dependent child, and £500 for a family, lone parent or couple with more than one dependent child. The criteria for phase 2 will be reviewed in July 2022, once we have when we know how many claims we have paid out through these particular phases. If there are any questions on this report, maybe there's an officer here who can fill in the gaps.
Thank you, Councillor Leach. Members, any questions? Councillor Shield.
Thank you. I can't claim to be an expert in this field at all, but I just wonder if I'm reading something correctly here. If you turn to the paras 3.3.1, 3.3.2 and 3.3.3, the first one and the last one, that's 3.3.1 and 3.3.3, refer to people that are in receipt of council tax reduction, thereby indicating that they are under some financial stress.
The middle one doesn't, as it is written. As I read that, award a one-off payment of £150 to any household who resides in a dwelling where the owner is liable for council tax and where the household are directly liable for energy bills. Well, that means pretty much anyone that lives in that band E to H property, I think. And I'm not sure that's what this is about.
Mr. Molyneux, I can see you're itching to answer this
I
one.
think that the word in receipt of council tax reduction might be missing. But I'm not an expert, unlike my friend over there.
Well, unlike my friend's wife, who's unfortunately unable to join us. I'm sure Mrs. Molyneux can answer that off the top of her head. I think that the key word is in 3.3.2 is any, that shouldn't be there, actually, because basically what paragraph 3.3.2 describes is people who don't pay the council tax, but effectively still pay the energy bills and still are in financial need. And I think it's the word any is probably the wrong word, actually. It should be households in financial need that don't pay the council tax bill. And I think that's probably the error, to which I hold my hand up. So I can blame my wife, that would be easy.
I think it's quite important that we get this absolutely spot on.
Well, I think you're pretty much right there, Mr. Molyneux. And I come back to Councillor Child's first point, and 3.3.1 refers to any household who are currently in receipt of council tax reduction. 3.3.3 is somewhat different in that it is those who are not in receipt of council tax reduction, but have low income and low savings. 3.3.2, I suspect, should read a one-off payment of £150 to any householder, maybe. It's about people who reside in homes of multiple occupancy where they don't have a relationship with council because they don't pay the council tax, but nevertheless paying energy bills. And this is an energy bill rebate. So,
yeah, but I think as it is written, it may not be right. But that was my concern.
Someone clever in me will have to revise that then if that's the case, because to me it makes a degree of sense. Yeah. I think we're all attuned with the intention. Can we check that, Mr. Molyneux, before it goes live? But I think we know what's intended there. I don't know if that's going to affect our recommendations at all.
I don't know, but I think it's important that we know precisely what.
Mr. Fairburn wants to give me some legal advice before I put my foot in it.
Chairman, all I was going to say was that you can delegate the wording, the finalisation of the wording to Mr. Molyneux. In consultation with yourself.
Mr. Molyneux's wife would be the more appropriate person.
So we might need to.
She would probably agree with you, Councillor.
So can we add a final recommendation, Mr. White, to delegate the final approval of wording?
Through you, Lee, I think it'd be a revision to part 1, to in fact, rather than just straight approve today, to delegate approval to Mr. Molyneux in competition with yourself.
Is that okay with everybody? I think we are aware of what the intention is here. It's just a question of getting the wording correct. So if everyone's happy with that, we'll amend the recommendations to read that. Thank you, Councillor Tudor. Any other questions, members? In which case, if we could move the recommendations, Councillor Leach and Mr. White will be able to come in and give you some advice on the actual wording that we're now using.
Thank you, Leader. So before Councillor Leach proposes a recommendation, he's happy to do so. The recommendation of part 1 would be that the Hub Committee delegates the final wording of the approval of the discretionary council tax rebate policy and scheme to the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with the Leader of Council.
Thank you. Are you happy with that, Councillor Leach? And would you like to therefore propose those amended recommendations?
I'd like to move the new recommendations. There's still 3 of them. And yes, ask the hub to agree.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second those recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Any debate, members? I'm not getting anything coming forward, but could I perhaps ask Mr. Molyneux to take our thanks back to the staff who was mentioned in the question, I think, and a brilliant job in getting the first tranche of the payments out. I did see something on Devon Live the other day that was trumpeting one particular council that was just about to start distributing, and we're at 93%. So if we could pass our thanks back, and obviously the efforts are continuing to get the payments out to those that aren't on direct debits as quickly as possible, and thank you for that.
I can update on the hub on that, Leader, if I may. So we're now at 95% of the direct debit payments. The people who have applied on the online form, so these are the non-direct debit payers, of which we're still only a small percentage, but their payments are starting to be processed this week. So some of those people will get their payments by the end of this week. We anticipate the post office voucher letters to be dropping before the end of this month, so that they will be able to effectively get their £150 before the end of this month. And then once the discretionary scheme goes live, the application process, and for some of those people, the post office scheme will start in effect straight away. So,
excellent, thank you. Any other debate, members? In which case, Councillor Crozier.
Only to commend the staff for their brilliant work, and I don't know if they're going to get any more work with the other monies that are coming out of government to support people who are on benefits or whatever, but we're doing a Trojan job. Many thanks go back to the team. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other debate, members. Will move to a vote. All those in favour of the amended recommendations?
That is unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. If we can move to the next item, members, which is the Contact Centre Service Review, which is another joint act of Councillors Cheadle and Edmonds, and I'm just debating whether we go to Councillor Cheadle first on this one, or whether that's completely wrong.
I'm happy to hold Councillor Edmonds' hands through this one.
Shall I? Councillor Edmonds, it's all over to you.
No, I'll hold his hand and do the talking.
I knew I was wrong somewhere on the line. Councillor Cheadle.
Okay. In introducing this report, I'd like to thank Dale Cropper for his work on this. And I very much welcome the fact that he's going to remain on our books to manage the delivery of the necessary work streams. It has been reviewed by the advisory group, albeit this morning, but no substantive comments came from that review. So the advisory group is content that it proceeds on its way. The report illustrates, I think, really quite well that this is not a simple subject. And there's no one silver bullet solution that's going to solve it. And the report sets out a number of actions that need to be done simultaneously. The aims of the report are set out in paragraph 1.3, seem very clear. Some of the statistics shown in the report are interesting, but need to be treated with some caution because they are gathered during COVID, as it were, and COVID was a sort of exceptional event. One hopes it was an exceptional event, and would probably have skewed the statistics in one way or another. But the bottom line is that we continue to miss our target of ensuring that 80% of calls are answered within 5 minutes. By some measure, the latest statistics suggest that it's around about 60% answered in under 5 minutes. But the positive news is that the number of calls answered full stop has risen. So people are perhaps being patient and waiting on the phone until their questions are answered. But there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that there's work to be done. And reading down through the report, towards the end, the report sets out the 9 streams of work that that need to be embarked on to deliver the results we look for. Each of those 9 areas of work is set out in a very simple sort of Gantt chart in the appendix. And I wanted to reassure the hub that although they just look like sort of simple boxes of work, each box contains a to-do list, and each to-do list will have what needs to be done, who's doing it, when it's going to be done, and a performance reporting mechanism saying that it's either sort of on track, suffering some delay, or being very difficult. So I mean, a red, amber, green type traffic light report. The report or the review of how this work is going will be brought back to the hub in 6 months' time. But in the meantime, it will be picked up by ONS at the routine thematic ONS review, where we'll bring to ONS's attention any of those items on the various to-do lists which are proving difficult to manage. So that's the report. I commend it to the hub as a very valuable piece of work that we need to get on with. If there are any questions, if they're easy ones, Councillor Evans will answer them. If they're difficult ones, Dale's on hand to handle those.
Thank you, Councillor Cheetham. Members, any questions? Councillor Leach.
I think I'm still sceptical about some of this data, because you talk to people and it seems to take a lot longer to actually get through. My question is, there's the report today. My concern for the future is as things bite from a financial point of view in the next 12 months, if not more, and more people start to cancel their contracts for their mobile phones and modems because they can't afford them and each. Are we expecting more calls to come through in the future? And if so, what are we doing to cope with that?
Not sure if that's an easy or a hard question, Councillor Leach, but thank you. I think in terms of the data, to answer your first question, all the data is pulled directly from the net core systems that we use, so it's 100% accurate. Most of the lines are answered in a 4 to 5 minute time frame. It tends to be the more complicated lines, such as revenues and benefits, that have a longer wait to get through. But the vast majority of our customers do see their call answered in a timely manner. In terms of kind of moving forward, what we have seen over the last 5 years or so is a year-on-year reduction in call volumes coming through, linking into kind of how people access our services digitally, and we expect that trend to continue moving forward.
If you'd like to come back on that, Councillor Leach.
Yes, we're talking about people who today can't afford to eat. And I've said this for a long time, it probably costs £50 a month to run either a mobile or a contract or whatever it is. And if you're on benefits already and expected to do everything through IT, and you're expecting it to get better and better as we go forward, I'm better be careful what words I use here. I think that that's being unrealistic, and we ought to have something in place just in case what you're expecting doesn't happen.
Can I bring in Mr. Mullen?
Thank you, Leader. I take your point, Councillor Leach. I think for me there's a number of things. I think the overall gain is that we are absolutely committed to try and improve our services so that we reduce the need for residents to contact us in the first place. So that's covering the whole range of things that Councillor Cheadle said, it's about providing better information, providing better access to information, be that via our website, be it via third-party agencies, all the range. We've got to be better at being understood and contactable. But ultimately, what Mr. Cropper said about the revenues and benefits line is a symptom of the fact that as we do that, there will be more complex cases which take longer to resolve, and that's a symptom of why people wait so long at council tax and benefits line. And what we're trying to do across the whole of the services that we offer is create the capacity so that we can deal with those people, and that's where we're trying to get to. I mean, in terms of the analogy around benefits people and not being able to interact digitally, well, the reality is for universal credit, you have to be able to complete online forms. So I think I'm more concerned that we create the capacity for those in need to be able to get through to us, and we spend the quality time we need to for some complex cases in terms of, and if you go back to the previous paper where we list all the different types of support we can offer people, it is a very complex world, the whole sort of benefit and support packages. And I'm convinced that many residents who are in need don't necessarily understand where they can get help from. And I think that's where we should be putting our focus. So all of the work that we're doing right across customer access services and resources is all aimed at creating capacity to help those that really need it. And I think that affects every service that we do, even if, you know, if it might be a call about a missed bin, or we want to make it as easy as possible so that people don't have to call us and we don't want to miss any bins. But if it creates the capacity for those that do need help, that we can help them, that's what we're aiming to achieve.
Just add to that, I mean, I think Councillor Leach makes a good point, and it is something we should be on the lookout for. Whether it'll happen or not, of course, only time will tell. But I think it's a valid point for us to have our antennae up to make sure that we can cope with it should it happen.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cheadle. Councillor Crozier, do you want to raise a point?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. The comment was made by Councillor Leach about £50 contract fees. You can get a mobile phone for £12, £10 plus VAT, £2 VAT. I've got one in my pocket now, quite easily. There are problems with patchy mobile signals throughout the borough, which is a problem. And already there are people in my neck of the woods who are cancelling their contracts and using the BT telephone kiosk. I know somebody who lives next door to the one in the village, and he said he sees people regularly going in there now and using it. So I'm pleased we still have the telephone kiosk. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bashall.
Thank you, Didi. I'm probably being a bit silly here, but something that Councillor Cheadle was mentioning about the time it takes to answer a call, I think it was to Councillor Leach, about it takes quite a long time to answer some of these calls. Do we have a system which records missed calls at all within this statistic?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So yeah, the system reports on how many calls are presented and then how many calls we're able to answer. Obviously, some customers will also choose within that process to perhaps hang up and then access the website as we direct them to do that. We also have things like queue buster. So if there's a long wait, the customer can leave their details and then they get put back into the queue at a later date. But yeah, we do report on both calls kind of answered and calls missed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which case, if I can ask you to move the recommendations, Councillor Cheadle.
Yes, I'd like to move the three recommendations at the head of the report to endorse the approach taken to the contact centre review and the subsequent and ongoing improvement plan, to recognise performance of the contact centre and how in recent months total calls answered and calls answered within 5 minutes has improved. I would add in brackets, but there's still some way to go. And 3, to note the timescales of the contact centre improvement plan as set out in the appendix, with further updates on progress in 6 months' time, recommendations to be brought to this committee. Thank you. I have a second.
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Members, we're into debate on this item. Is there any debate? You've had an interesting discussion already about some of the aspects. Anything else anyone would like to add? Councillor Cheadle.
Well, it just, because members might be interested, this subject when discussed raised the subject of sort of the Kilworthy contact, if I can put it that way. We're in the process, in the middle of a trial, keeping Kilworthy open 2 days a week. My understanding is that that trial will be brought to the hub. The results of for a decision on the long-term sort of viability or way ahead with, because people coming into Kilworthy is a form of contact. So it's relevant to talk about it in this framework. As I say, people were asking, well, what's the future of the front desk here in Kilworthy? And my understanding is that will be presented to the hub sometime in September-ish.
I think September is the plan, yes.
Thank you, that's really, really helpful. Any other debate, members? In which case we'll move to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendations?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, members. We can move to agenda item 13, Planning Services Improvement Plan. And if I could ask Councillor Mott to update us on this topic. Councillor Mott.
Thank you, Leader. Seamless swapping of seats. Members, you can see from the supplementary reports, this is an update. As members are aware, we are in the middle of reviewing the whole of the planning provision within the borough and how we can improve the service. And one of the things to come out of that review is the need to give extra support for the senior levels within that department, as it were. So you'll see from the report what we are proposing for the restructure of that and how we propose to fund that. I don't know what else you want me to.
No, I think that's fine as a summary, Councillor Mott. Members will have read the report. Any questions, members? Councillor Cheadle.
Yeah, I'm just curious to understand where this sort of came from. We've done the planning service review, and we were implementing the recommendations of that. And presumably at some stage of implementing those recommendations, we sort of came to the conclusion that what we'd agreed to do wasn't going to work. Have I sort of got that right? Or where did this bit come from? Because it wasn't in the original planning service review proposals. So it's a new recommendation, sort of, it's come in halfway through.
Yes, Mr. Powell, I think if you could.
Thank you. No, I think when we were looking at the improvement plan and implementing it, part of it was to look at the actual way that planning was managed. At the time, case management was separate to the planning service. So we pulled that together, and then I was working with our principal planners to look at the capacity of the team to deliver the sort of standard of service that I know members expect. And going through that process, it became clear to me that looking at the workload at that level, looking at the size of the team, we were never going to get to that point. So the plan was being implemented not as quickly as I think we would like, and the capacity to carry on providing the service and to improve and to deliver against the ambition under the plan for West Devon just wasn't going to happen. So after 2 or 3 months of looking at it, that was my conclusion, and hence the proposal coming forward.
Yeah, so I could just sort of come back on that. I mean, I'm not critical of the recommendation. I mean, I think the splitting of the service into sort of 2 halves is a thoroughly good idea in my book. Presumably, we will put in some form of performance monitoring arrangements on the new system to check that it is delivering the things that you wanted it to.
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of the struggle, to be honest. Councillor Cheadle, we've struggled to even get control of performance management. We've been dealing with things by exception, with problems, rather than being in a proactive position to manage. And, you know, the scale of the service has been huge. And I think a dedicated head of service for West Devon and one for South Hams will deliver that sort of level of control, and also have that sort of recognition of the area's challenges as well through the planning process. So I think the benefits are many, which hopefully comes out through the report.
Can I just sneak in one further question and understand that the planning service will sort of divide into two parts. Will enforcement follow suit? So will we have our dedicated enforcement specialists in West Devon and likewise in Southampton?
So what we're proposing to do is it remains one service across the board, but officers will be geographically based and working to a head of service, and the same with enforcement. At the moment, they're roughly split in a geographical basis. There needs to be flexibility because workflow goes up and down. But again, I think having people working in a specific area where possible helps build those relationships with the parishes, the towns, and members as well. So yeah, that's the intention.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which case, Councillor Mott, if we can ask you to move the recommendations.
It seems a bit ingenious to sort of say page 1 where the recommendations are. However, as this is a supplementary report outside of the main agenda, as per the recommendations on page 1 of the report, please.
Thank you. Can we have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second that.
Councillor Cheadle, thank you. Members, any debate on this issue? In which case, we'll move straight to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendations?
That's 8 unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. And that brings this afternoon's proceedings to a close. So thank you very much, members, for your attendance and contribution this afternoon. And I'll see you all very soon. Thank you.